Hi, my name is Mark. I am the Industry Solutions Lead for Healthcare as part of Databricks. I'm joined here of Garrett Little.
Yep, Garrett Little from Datavant, one of our solutions leads over there, working on our tech integrations.
Absolutely. We're going to talk today about something very deep and powerful with our actual integration of Datavant today. So we're actually able to utilize Datavant technology, take their on-prem systems and move it onto Databricks, and we're going to talk about how we did it, and very specifically, how we're actually scaling this usage. So with that in mind, welcome to Sparking Real-World Data Connectivity, Datavant, and the usage on a Databricks clean room.
So what we want to start off with is a quick level set really on sort of what Datavant is, what we do, and sort of what the purpose of Datavant is at the starting point. So if we think about the reason that Datavant really was created, it's really to solve what we saw as an issue in the entire healthcare industry of data logistics and data really being incapable of being properly accessed, moved, and utilized across different organizations. So basically, there's a ton of people who have data, there's a ton of people who want to use data, but oftentimes those people can't connect for various sorts of reasons, compliance reasons, actual sort of efforts internally, or technological reasons, or just pure privacy issues with how they're connecting the data between these people who have the data and the people really who need that data to use it for various reasons. And again, this is sort of covering all sorts of different groups. And if you give me my next slide here, thank you. This really crosses the boundaries sort of from patients through to providers, pharmaceutical companies. There's plenty of organizations that sell data today, so various data sources, insurance companies, lab vendors, all sorts of folks who sit on this data. But if it's not being utilized correctly, we run into significant problems throughout the industry. So if you're a healthcare provider, you're a doctor, you're a physician, you're trying to make the right diagnosis for your patient, if you've been informed incorrectly on sort of what the correct diagnosis pathway for a patient is, that means that patient's gonna get the wrong treatment. If you're an insurance company, that means you're not optimizing your funding correctly. You're not sort of recommending the right drugs for physicians to treat their patients. You're not approving the right things. I think probably everybody in this room at one point or another has had issues with prior authorization, challenges with getting the right prescriptions or paying for those. So that's an area where we look at. We also look at life sciences organizations really from a clinical through to a commercial stage of drug development and production, as well as med device organizations leveraging these devices to properly understand okay, I've got a surgical robot. Is that actually doing what it's supposed to? Or how much is that improving patient care? How much better are things than they used to be versus sort of the orthopedic surgeons who were in there 10 years ago kind of hacking away? We look at all of these things and we basically say, there are applications in every one of these places for better linking data with the people, again, the people who have it and the people who need that data and want to utilize it. And so we basically want to assess that problem in a couple of different ways. So the first thing is, how do you make that data compliant? How do you take a look at these different sources of data? How do you ensure that there's still utility in the data, but that you're not doing it in a way that violates patient privacy, violates patient rights, goes against HIPAA or otherwise? So basically, what we take a look at is tokenization software, is sort of the Datavant core practice. Taking patient information, name, gender, date of birth, address, et cetera, and compliantly, HIPAA compliantly, turning that into an encrypted string that's specific to any individual person. It's deterministic in how it's generated, but it's also encrypted at a company, project, organization level in a way that enables that data to be transferred and assessed without removing all of the analytic utility. We want to do this in order to basically solve all of these use cases, which we've mentioned previously, but there are certainly issues with this approach. When we're thinking about tokenization, that requires going to where the PHI lives. That requires going behind firewalls. We've developed an application that sits on these desktops, that sits in different cloud environments, but isn't done in a native way. So when you're running our command line interface, it's great. Awesome, you have your encrypted data, but now it still needs to be moved between organizations. So I still need to run my Datavant software against the PHI that I'm sitting on, and I need to send it over to Mark. Mark needs to pick that data. He needs to re-encrypt it in now his format. We're doing a handshake operation. There's data movement. I'm pulling it out of my cloud. I'm running it. I'm sending it over to him. He's pulling it back up. And we really thought that this was a challenge that we wanted to overcome, because the first step of the problem we solved a couple of years ago of how do you really turn patient information into an encrypted string that is HIPAA compliant? But now we want to make sure that's able to be used in really an effective way, and repeatable way, in a way that is not expensive and timely.
So with that in mind, it was about the year 2023, and Databricks is looking to really expand our healthcare ecosystem. And what we realized is that there is actually a very, very important use case right now for tokenization of patient-level data, because what was really happening is, one, we had federal compliance rules that ensured that we had to tokenize in the first place using what were called site-specific tokens. And two, there's actually a lot of machine learning and AI and data science we can operate on top of this data set, but we cannot operate when we actually have a lot of PHI information inside of it. So we looked at the different companies that are available that are actually generating solutions, and Datavant immediately popped up as one of the leading tokenizers in the entire healthcare industry today. So we partnered with them in order to take a look at their existing technology, their on-prem systems, and bring that technology into a Databricks environment, because we wanted to really do one major thing. We wanted to bring tokenization and compute over to where the data actually resides. Instead of having to move it from one platform to another, we could actually have it operating on the same platform, within the same environment for folks here, within your same cloud systems, within your same VPs and the same networking. And this is actually very interesting, because when we first produced this solution, we tested it with multiple customers, and we'll talk a little bit about a case study later with what particular customer that we use with. But what we realized is that we want to go further than that. It's not just getting Datavant software running on a per client basis on a Databricks workspace. It was actually about how can we integrate this into the marketplace, into our ecosystem right now? How can we have this generated such that our customers today who are within the healthcare and life sciences can actually access the Datavant software very, very easily? And that's where we added them into the Databricks marketplace. Today, Databricks marketplace has over 170 providers, 1,700 plus listings, over 100,000 visitors, and we're constantly growing quarter over quarter our different active connections. And Datavant is now one of the key players inside of our healthcare ecosystem when it comes to processing, tokenizing data, and actually producing, very importantly, those token linkages that are necessary to actually yield more important insights. And we'll talk a little bit more about clean rooms and how that actually happens later on. But the entire point here is that we actually very much value the Datavant partnership, and we want to actually add more and more data providers into our marketplace ecosystem, leveraging technology like Datavant's tokenization. So with that in mind, the Datavant solution was purposely built within a Databricks environment to match three major concepts, three major keys that we had to look at. One is we wanted to improve data processing. Clients were complaining about some of Datavant's tokenization technology in the past since it was built on an on-prem system. It could be a little bit slower than what folks actually wanted. At times, it could be a lot slower. So we wanted to figure out how we can improve the data processing, and that was going to be pretty quick. One of the fastest ETL environments in the entire world is a Databricks Lakehouse today. So utilizing Databricks Lakehouse technology, we could actually speed up this process, and very importantly, we wanted to work on data augmentation. So the data that's coming in, we wanted to link it across multiple different data sets and multiple different organizations. We wanted to even connect to real-world data. And to do that, we had to start leveraging different technologies like delta sharing within the Databricks ecosystem as well. And very, very important. When it comes to processing any kind of this kind of data, in every government in the world, this data is highly regulated and highly protected. So we had to make sure that the solution of moving Datavant technology onto Databricks is going to leverage our privacy-enabled methods in order to ensure that any analytics running on top of that would be secure. Now, with that in mind, with Datavant, we actually have an end-to-end solution on existing customers' cloud environments that can be sold through the Databricks marketplace.
So basically, when we think about sort of the tokenization and data linkage process, there's sort of a handful of steps here that we think about of sort of start to finish what that end-to-end process really looks like. So the first step is de-identifying and tokenizing data. It's taking Garrett Little, my gender, date of birth, address information, turning me into ABC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, doing that in the same way in really every location. We have gone through the process of certifying all of these tokenization methods, ensuring that they're compliant with HIPAA today, so that you don't have to use a safe harbor method, which is the other option that you have, which basically removes all of the analytic utility from these different data sets. However, when we're uploading, overlapping, assessing that data, there's sort of some steps in there that I'm gonna quickly jump through and say, when we wanna connect that data, that does have to go through sort of that expert determination process again. All of that tokenization and connection of the data directly is all held within Databricks today. So all of that whole process of de-identifying, tokenizing, linking the data together, that is handled seamlessly within the Databricks environment in a way that is faster, cheaper, easier, all in all, 100% better basically in every single place that we've looked at it. Now, we have upload, overlap, certified, distribute as some other steps that are not totally solved for yet, but we're going to talk a little bit about sort of what that upload and overlap process looks like in a replacement for what customers have historically done in ways that historically have assessed data linkage and overlaps ahead of time prior to purchasing data or prior to undertaking analytics projects by leveraging Databricks clean room solutions, and how that really enhances those steps as well, leaving really just a couple of final steps, ensuring that your linked data sets within these environments are HIPAA compliant, go through a certification process, understanding that compliance departments, privacy departments always have an eye on these things. We'll never fully remove all of those steps, but this facilitates and speeds up that entire process from de-identification through tokenization, through loading the data in the same place, getting it connected to get to analytics faster, to get to linked data sets faster, and to get to that certification process more easily.
Absolutely. And when we talk about this entire process, you can see there's actually 6 major steps here. 4 out of the 6 major steps can now run within a Databricks environment. And very importantly, we don't have to upload data to a Datavant portal anymore. If you understand how Datavant tokenization technology generally works, we have to get these encryption keys, site keys, that can be retrieved easily from the Datavant vault itself. After that, all the data processing is going to happen on a Databricks environment. We'll encrypt using the site keys themselves, and we can do very easy overlap studies on top of Databricks systems using standard SQL in this case. While we don't have certification and distribution completely on Databricks yet, we are looking to expand the Datavant Databricks partnership to eventually provide more of those abilities as well. Let's go next.
I think we can all sort of see this is what we've been talking about the whole time, right? You take that individualized information, you take PII, you turn it into a token, you can do that directly on Databricks. I mean, this is the whole thesis of what we want to accomplish, is really take information about an individual, run our software, have that be present within Databricks in a way so our tokens can be leveraged within that environment. And what we're going to show you too is that this is both easy to accomplish in terms of the actual coding required and the way that we've set up these integrations, and also the specific value of doing this and how much time is saved from customers that we've already done this process with, tackling sort of tens of millions of patient records and looking at how that works once we've gone through this whole implementation process with them. So this simplifies a couple of things, and if you want to...
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens is we understand our clients are storing data today within their own Delta Lake environments, their own data lakes, and we actually see a lot of customers storing that within the Lakehouse environment itself. One of the major parts about the Lakehouse is that we want to get the compute running within the actual where the data resides in order to get the most efficiencies possible. So what this really means is we're trying to avoid any kind of data egress. So since customers' PI data was already stored within the Lakehouse, we realized that we could run the tokenization software directly on top of the warehouses that are operating within Databricks today. So that means within your data plane today, you can store your data, you can get it stored securely, and very importantly, you can also use your own compute clusters within your own VPC in this case to do the tokenization process. So technically, nothing that was actually PHI or PI can even leave your environment in this case. We tokenize that data on top of the Lakehouse environment, and now that we have tokenized data that's basically stripped of the PHI and PI information, we can now do a lot of analytics on top of that. And that's when we talk about creating what's called a connectable data set. We've taken data that I would say is extremely, let's say, hazardous at some points or quarantined, and we've actually converted into something we can now utilize and get useful metrics out of. So we can actually push it into something called Databricks Clean Rooms. This is something that we've made announcements already. And this is the ability to basically do overlap studies, work in an environment in which multiple parties can provide access to their data set without actually truly reading the data set, using agreed upon metrics and code. We can also use other analytic tools like our Lakeview dashboards within Databricks, so we can build useful dashboards on top of those data sets itself. And very importantly, because we are building out the data ecosystem quite actively at Databricks, we can also connect to other data sets that are available from the Databricks marketplace today. Many of the major healthcare data providers, such as claims data, is actually available within the Databricks marketplace today, so you can actually augment your data with other external data as well. Now, importantly, the data stays within your Databricks Lakehouse environment, so it never leaves your particular VPC unless that's what you desire. The tokenized data can now connect to your own internal data sets and your external data sets, all governed under the unique catalog. And very importantly, we can use any kind of Databricks analytics tooling, including clean room technologies. So I'm going to show 2 code samples today. Who here has actually utilized Databricks? Just raise your hand. This is wonderful. This is great to see this many Databricks users. Who here has used Datavant? Similar, actually, people who've used Databricks and
Same
Datavant.
group.
Who here has tried Datavant on Databricks yet? Okay, all right. Well, I hope after this, all of you try Databricks on Datavant. So what we here have is a code sample of what actually goes inside of a clean room today. If you have ever used Databricks or any kind of Spark-based system to read code, you'll notice this looks very familiar, right? This is very standard code in order to read in a table. And you'll notice that we're pulling in from our Unity catalog systems. So we have Collaborator A and Collaborator B. So it's actually Collaborator A and ML demos in this case, which is Collaborator B. And what we're doing is we're going to read both data sets into two different data frames. Now, what's really important about these two data sets is that they exist within two different environments. One exists within Collaborator A's environment, let's say Garrett's environment in this case, and for simplification, the other one exists within my environment, which is Mark's environment. I'm Collaborator B. Now, in many cases, we actually might not want each other to see the minute details of each other's data sets. We actually may be rivals in the marketplace for all we know in this case. But we do want to get a better idea of what overlap we could actually have and what kind of statistics and metrics, let's say the entire industry at large might be looking at, or for this particular diagnosis treatment that our patients have. So we can do something very simple. We do a join. You notice this is where the Datavant technology really comes in. When we do a join on these two data sets, legally speaking today, you actually cannot easily do the join because the encryption keys will always be different. However, utilizing Datavant technology, we can generate these tokens in which we actually agree upon these tokens themselves will match between the two different data sets when it's actually generated on the fly within the clean room itself. And then after we join these two data sets, we now have a unified data set. And we can actually get very useful information out of this. This is a very simple one. Let me get the number of identified patients that are actually similar between both data sets themselves. Now, you're actually able to process almost anything within the clean room environment today. We support the four major languages, so Scala, Python, SQL, and do we have any R users? There we go, R as well. We support R as well. And very importantly, when you are utilizing these four different languages in the environment, you'll have to actually ensure that, let's say, Garrett and me both agree upon what analysis is going to be run on top of the data set. So we've seen two things today. One is tokenization technology that is moved from an on-prem system onto Databricks' Lakehouse environment. And the second one is we're seeing how that tokenization technology is going to enable us to join data between two different organizations at this point. And very importantly, we are doing this in a legal fashion because neither of us are able to read each other's data. We're only able to see the statistics that we have actually agreed upon to read from the data set itself. So for example, we could be looking at demographics for populations. I could be looking at the different ages that are available within this data set. I could be looking at the different diagnoses available in the data set, or what kind of NDC drugs that people are looking at as well. So I'm gonna leave it to Garrett to talk about Veritas.
So there's a couple of things that this does. I mean, I think we talked about the three pillars earlier, really, of improving speed, improving data connection, and really focusing on those first two aspects here. What we did was work with one of our customers who was set up a data pipeline which was taking them about 24 hours to run. They were providing mortality data to a number of different pharmaceutical organizations and med device companies within the United States. They were running our desktop application. Their setup was a little, let's say, not optimal. It was taking them 24 hours to get the PII, get it tokenized, and get it ready to send to their customers via a transform process. Obviously, every single hour of that delay, incredibly painful for them. So that's looking at cost to revenue, potentially hits to their SLAs, but also the people who are actually doing the work with the information and trying to understand, hey, we want to understand, our therapies, how effective they are, if our patients are, what that disease progression looks like. These are incredibly important insights for these folks to be running on a regular basis. So any delays to these data deliveries is a huge issue. So we heard that complaint from them, and we figured this was the perfect solution to solve for this issue. We knew they were a Databricks customer. We knew they were a Datavant customer. So we got them set up with a trial process for our integration that we had just built at this point. So they tested workloads of 40 to 80 million patients that were, these data sets were stored within Databricks, and they were able to run those about 4 times as fast in terms of the native application actually running the tokenization process. So significant time improvements because we're leveraging Databricks natively instead of, we know some customers have set up our CLI and gotten it embedded in Databricks. This way, basically, actually leverages Databricks properly, and to use that native application, all of the updates are automatically deployed through the Databricks marketplace, significantly easier on that front, but also they didn't have to spend any time worrying about that anymore. There was significantly less time scripting it out, significantly less time working on upgrades, significantly less time pulling and pushing data around as they were going through their tokenization and transform processes to send data out to various customers. So we basically were looking at time savings of, nearly a full day for them, going from sort of 24 hours of work involved with these data distribution processes to an hour and change for the actual tokenization, transform, and delivery of the data. Significant time improvements, significant compute cost decreases because of how much less data they were having to move around and the efficiencies with going with the native application, and just significantly less time spent on it. Their employees no longer were spending time troubleshooting, working through these things. The native application is set up in such a way that we do not have to deal with any sort of scripting around the confines of what the Datavant CLI currently does today, and it leverages everything within Databricks completely natively. We think this is really, super exciting just in terms of how much easier, faster, and better this makes working with Datavant for our customers, because this has been, frankly, a hassle for our customers for years of having to use files. I'm seeing some nods from the audience. So having to use files, not being able to use tables, not being able to use our applications natively. We've seen this work significantly better for these folks, as well as some other pilot customers we can't quite talk about yet, but really excited, broadly speaking, about sort of this case study. And the second point of all of this is really this clean rooms piece. And I know Mark talked about this, but I want to hit on a couple of these points even a little, hit them again, because we think this is really super, super fascinating. And I think there's been discussion about clean rooms for a long time, and like, what are clean rooms going to do? How do they work? What's the point? We're proving this out right now with exactly how clean rooms work, what they can do. If you're a data purchaser, you're a pharmaceutical company, med device, you're another type of organization who's investigating data, you can actually investigate the data prior to purchasing it now. You can actually go in and take a look at the data. It's not a question anymore of, hey, how many patients do you have with a non-small cell lung cancer diagnosis? It's, you can pull the number of patients that you have in their data set with that diagnosis, and you can understand the longitudinality of those patients. How many records are actually present in there? The clean rooms that we're setting up with Databricks and Datavant can enable those analyses ahead of time, prior to a data purchase, prior to an agreement, prior to working together, which is absolutely novel, super fascinating, and really interesting. We think for anybody who's used our portal previously and done overlaps, really the next level in what that does beyond just number of patients into all of these pieces. But if you're not a data purchaser, if you are selling data, you're distributing data to other folks, there are advantages for you as well, because you can properly explain how your data works. You can share pre-approved queries to highlight how all of that works, and you have the ability to approve all of those linked workflows, approve all of those assessments ahead of time. Every one of these queries basically gets assessed, approved by both parties. The data is linked with a handshake between both parties. So it's a collaborative process in order to do better assessments of the data. And that's just prior to any of these analytics projects. That's prior to purchasing data. Once you have the data in place, rather than spending all your time coordinating, sending data around, what does it look like? Send me the data dictionary, load it into my S3 bucket, or God forbid your SFTPs. Your data lives within Databricks. It's Delta shared across your organizations. It's Delta shared to the clean room. Those processes and analytics projects can be set up directly in this environment, leveraging the tools that Databricks has built today, leveraging the tools that you have built today already within your Databricks environment, leveraging the scripts you've set up and the processes and the models, leveraging all of that without having to dig around, move data between organizations. All of that is now possible within these clean rooms. We're really excited about it, and really what it's going to do for both data purchases, assessments, and actually the work that comes after all of that, making it faster, better, significantly cheaper in terms of both compute costs and effort from everybody to set all these projects up, and just time spent waiting for data to move and coordination. So we're really, really excited about how this process is going to work, how we can pull data in between both partners. And we've yeah, we're really excited about what that looks like.
Absolutely. And I'd like to stress, this technology is actually enabled via utilizing Databricks cleanroom technologies, but very importantly, in order to even get this working within a cleanroom in the first place, we needed a much faster Datavant binary. And that is actually what we've actually worked with Datavant in this case. We've worked on actually parallelizing their software and distributing onto the Databricks cluster itself, leveraging the best that Databricks has to offer. And for that, we can actually do this transformation. Because remember, what happens when we have this kind of data is collaborator A is going to have very specific site keys. Collaborator B has different site keys. So if I put them in the same clean room, they still won't join. This is on purpose, right? So what we need is the ability to actually transform them into the same site key. So utilizing this clean room encryption key very, very quickly. And utilizing the Datavant Databricks technology, that's what we have. Because we are much, much faster. 75% CPU reduction in time, 80% reduction in total times what we see with at least Veritas. But we do see major, major improvements of other customers as well.
Mm-hmm. So basically, what does this look like? I mean, we've talked about sort of the specific ways that this speeds up processing, leverages Databricks technology to make Datavant better, enables a number of fascinating use cases. But really, wherever you're coming from, whether you're a data source or an analytics organization or a pharma company or a med device company or you're an insurance company and you're trying to better understand your data because you're collecting it from various clearinghouses, all of these different aspects we think are improved by leveraging Datavant within Databricks to make it faster, easier, and cheaper to do all this stuff, which ultimately comes down to improving patient outcomes at the end of the day, where we're looking at faster processing and information leads to better decision-making, improved patient outcomes, basically better processes all around, sort of from start to finish in these projects, and overall decreasing timelines, decreasing headaches, and really taking what we have at Datavant kind of to the next level and making it much more usable and workable, on a regular recurring basis for, various organizations across the whole healthcare spectrum. And finally, I mean, basically the answer to this question is, when would this make sense for you? We think it's basically everybody, but if you have high data volume, doing continuous data processing, constant transformations, you're streaming data through, better solution for that. If you spend a lot of time managing and upgrading Datavant processes historically, this is a great solution for you. If you overall want to just simplify your data pipelines for linking projects, data purchasing, data distributions, this is a great solution for you. And if you want to make this overall cheaper and easier by leveraging Databricks' native application, this is also a great solution for you.
Absolutely, and that's the entire point. We wanted to really leverage the Databricks Lakehouse advantages in order to really help our customers get to time to insights much, much faster. And one of the major parts about it, any kind of healthcare data, is tokenization. If I want to do any kind of real analytics use case on top of that, we're able to process very, very high data volumes because Databricks was always built to scale. We do support structured streaming within our systems. We understand that as the number of, what we've noticed in the healthcare industry as well, as the number of epidemics have increased over time in the last 2 decades, the need for real-world evidence has severely jumped at this point, which means people need frequent real information coming in that's telling us how patients are doing at this point. What kind of spread of disease are we looking at? What are the demographics? So we realized that when we actually use the Datavant tokenization software, we also needed to speed it up because very importantly, we expect to actually hit streaming-like use cases off of this data set as well. And very importantly, if you're doing any of this stuff, you're going to need CI/CD, right? I mean, this is pretty sensitive information. So what will happen is that Databricks is able, you can leverage the native CI/CD systems within Databricks today or our third-party integrations so that, or if you are producing any kind of advanced analytics, not only can you produce advanced analytics on the freshest data, you can also produce advanced analytics in a very, very auditable fashion. So you have Unity catalog governance on top of that. Very importantly, you also have code level governance utilizing the CI/CD platform itself. And very obviously, we are one of the cheapest ETL platforms out there, so this is usually more cost effective on our systems.
Sweet.